Welcome to SMU Stories, the podcast where we dive into the journeys of remarkable alumni from Southern Methodist University who have excelled in the world of business. I'm your host, Mitch Brown, and each episode will uncover the secrets, challenges, and triumphs of this extraordinary individual. From entrepreneurs who've turned dreams into multi-million-dollar enterprises to executives leading global corporations, SMU has nurtured a community of innovators, leaders, and visionaries. Join us as we sit down with the alumni who have walked the same halls, studied in the same classrooms, and emerged as industry pioneers. Get ready for insights, inspiration, and actionable advice as we explore the unique SMU stories that have shaped the business landscape. Whether you're a current student, an aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the power of the SMU network, this podcast is for you. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's embark on a journey through the compelling narratives of SMU alumni who are making waves in the business world. This is SMU Stories. Let's begin. SMU Stories is brought to you by Security National Bank of Texas, SMU Cox School of Business, Morrison Seeger Venture Capital Partners, and Hilltop Property Tax. Lauren, thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited to tell your SMU story. As we do at the start with every episode, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, thanks for having me, Mitch. I'm Lauren Harper. I graduated from SMU in the class of 2012, majored in finance with a specialization in alternative assets, so was part of that group. And I am currently the chief of staff at Kodiak. We're an autonomous driving company.
Very exciting. I know we'll have a lot to discuss on that side of the house, but first, we always like to start with kind of how you found yourself at SMU, a little bit of your experience on campus. So being that you're from Arkansas, maybe SMU, you had heard of it, or knew Texas was a familiar state to go to school, but tell us how you found the school and kind of what was your ultimate choice and why you picked SMU.
Yes, so I grew up in Northwest Arkansas. It's about a 5-hour drive from Dallas. I like to think that's the perfect distance away from home. I got to move to a big city and be on my own, but I wasn't so far away I couldn't drive home if I wanted to. So that had a big pull. But I also come from a family of SMU people. So I think I've had 7 cousins graduate from SMU over the past 30 years, a brother, my uncle. So there's been a long history of Harpers going through SMU. So I kind of followed in their footsteps, to be honest. I looked up to my cousins when I was younger. They went to SMU. They said it was amazing. I was like, well, I'm going to do that too.
Perfect. I think there's definitely a common thread to having a family member who went to SMU. As we've done a lot of these stories, that's definitely a leading one, right? Now we're a little bit more of a brand recognizable name, but it's definitely if you had a parent who went there or regionally or a sibling, and then the second you step on campus, it's an easy sell. What was it about their experience and kind of what they told you or what you saw them evolve and graduate from that kind of even strengthened that decision to go to SMU?
Yeah, well, like you said, the second you step on campus, it's pretty awesome, right? It's beautiful. You're in the heart of Dallas. It's really hard to not enjoy the atmosphere. I even went to cheer camps at SMU during the summers when I was in high school. So I kind of got to experience the McElvaney dorm and all of that and fall in love with it for myself. But my cousins, they've done a whole slew of different things. I have a lawyer. I have a tech entrepreneur. I have a cousin that works for President Bush. So they're all across the board. So I think I felt like I can go and do whatever I want if I go to SMU.
That's nice to see the depth of our alumni base and what an SMU degree can do for you. And another reason why we're wanting to do these SMU stories, because you, like your cousins, like everyone else, is doing incredible things. So you had a little bit of a unique experience knowing that you had family members who've gone there. You kind of saw a path of where an SMU degree can take you. You mentioned you were in the Cox School of Business. Was that always a business track when you got into SMU? You knew that's what you wanted to study?
I think like many people, I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. I think I liked biology and chemistry. I was always a little more math brained, but I didn't see myself being a doctor. And so I was like, well, I'll be in the business school. And I had a finance teacher that I loved his class. I think it was like AP Finance, the basic one. And I had some good girlfriends in it. We had such a great time in the class that we're like, we're going to do alternative assets together. And then it really just like took off from there. And that's what I ended up doing. So I think teachers make a difference. I think enjoying a class makes a difference. And I already knew that the math side of things is really where I was best. Right.
Awesome. And so you've had a pretty awesome career thus far in business. What is there kind of anything you look back on, obviously that class in specific, but lessons you've learned from SMU that you've carried with you as your business career has evolved post graduation?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm really grateful for at SMU is my basic finance skills. And I think no matter what you do career wise, whether you're in marketing or sales or finance, or you're going to use finance somewhere in there. And my first job out of school, so many of the kids didn't know how to use Excel. They didn't know how to do like a basic DCF, and having some of those just actual tangible skills put me ahead of the game. And being ahead of the game coming out of school gives you a lot of confidence, and that can really help you do well in your first job. Everyone can get there, but not starting out behind is really helpful.
Absolutely. So the alternative assets program, you start to kind of have a lane that you're going towards. What was the job search like post graduation or kind of on campus? Where was Lauren thinking coming into senior year she wanted to do career wise or potential as a first job?
So I was a little bit unusual. I did do a summer internship with InCap Investments, who's been a big supporter of SMU. That was an amazing experience for me. Another big way I learned Excel skills was during that internship. So I'll be forever thankful to those guys. But I also had this passion for dancing and acting. And so I knew I didn't want to do investment banking because I wanted to be able to have time to dance on the side. So I looked at finance roles that were a little less time consuming, but nonetheless challenging. And I ended up going to Deloitte to work in their financial advisory services division. A guy that had graduated a couple years above me at SMU, and we'd become friends. He had worked there for a few years, really enjoyed it, and kind of helped me get my foot in the door with the interview. And so that's how I ended up at that job. It was a good mix of challenging, still on the right career path, but gave me a little bit of time to still pursue passions that I had when I was 22 years old. So.
For sure. And to that piece, how important is it, understanding your network and the ability that network can have in some of your career search now, right? For those students who are listening, right?
Yeah.
It's the peers that you know the people above you, kind of stay in touch with what they're doing. That can be a big, support system as you're trying to find that first job or even understand what's out there.
I think the networking is everything. I know people say it over and over and over again and it gets old, but I have never gotten a job from HR. Ever. I've never gotten a job from a resume drop. I've never gotten a job from any traditional outlet that they tell you to do. It's always come from someone in my network or someone I reached out to on my own to network with.
And so Deloitte's the spot. It's a great company. What was that first year like out of school? You mentioned having some good training through the Cox School, but what was it like stepping into the real world at a big firm such as Deloitte and getting right to work?
I think firms like Deloitte can be good because you have a class that joins with you. So I had other students that had just graduated my age, all starting in the same division. So that kind of gives you the buddy system, which is really nice in your first job. We did a lot of modeling. And then actually at the time, Deloitte acquired a restructuring group. So I went over and worked on a restructuring project for part of my first year out of school. And that was very challenging, but very eye-opening to step into a business that's having a very hard time and say, how do we try to turn this around? Like, what do you do? I think that's been pretty invaluable experience going forward as well, because it's not always smooth sailing.
And so I imagine you're in that spot, you're doing well, you see kind of a career path in finance, in restructuring, in corporate finance, corporate America that could be appealing and have, a career going forward. And so now that we got the formalities out of the way, that we can begin the fun conversation on Lauren's career, because you have two sides already that I think our audience will find very fascinating and want to learn about. You're at Deloitte. You have probably all the optionality in the world, but as you mentioned earlier, you have an interest in kind of film and entertainment. You decide to put Deloitte on pause, move out to LA, and get into kind of the film acting world. One, talk us through that decision. I imagine it's a big one, but then explain to us, like myself, who wouldn't understand the business side of LA and film and production.
Yes. So after a year at Deloitte, I quit and I moved out to Los Angeles. I'd love to say it was really this thought out, perfect planned deal, but it wasn't. My roommate at the time had quit her job and was going to leave. And I was like, okay, well, I have to move anyways. If I don't go and try and pursue this passion of mine now, I'm never going to do it, right? It's not something you don't move out to LA on a whim when you're 35 years old. You do it when you're 23 years old. So I think I talked to my parents about it, and it was like, I can come back to this. And by the way, I am a testament to you can come back from things. You can make different career pivots and it's going to be okay. And so I went out there and I just started trying to break into the industry. It's pretty wild to do that and not know anyone. I started by taking class, auditioning. I did a lot of odd jobs. I danced for a Bollywood dance group out there. I danced for a little local pop singer around town. I did the books for a private jeweler. She did engagement rings for some wealthy clientele, but had issues with their books. So worked on that. So basically just did a ton of odd jobs. And I think how it works a little, well, I'm gonna say what really helped me catch on was I was on a set. They had an issue with their budget. I said, hey, I have a finance degree. Can I take a look at it? Which is kind of weird, but I did it and I fixed it. I found a couple, bugs in their model. And they said, okay, great. Can you do that again next week? I said, yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do it again next week. And basically that just steamrolled through, and I started doing music videos with them, documentaries with them, all kinds of projects. And so how that really works is, let's use a music video. So Atlantic Records comes and they say, we have this artist and we want to do a music video. This is the song. This is kind of, maybe they have an idea of what they want, maybe they don't. And you pitch, just like you pitch any other kind of business. You build a pitch deck, you build a budget, and you say, this is what we can do for this much money. This is how we're going to do it. This is how long it's going to take. And you have to win the pitch. So I would participate in building the pitch. If we win the pitch, you go out and execute on it, right? I'd hire the people that were in the pitch. We'd manage the money. We'd set up shop. We'd shoot the video. And then we basically dissolve it, hand them all their receipts, and wipe it clean and start a new project. So wow. I like to say that entertainment is like starting a company and dissolving it for every little project. It's just a mini version, right? It might last for 3 weeks. It might last for 2 years, but you're getting something ramped up, you're working on it for a while, and then you're dissolving it. So it's very fast paced, it's very ambiguous, and it can be a lot of fun.
And then, so I mean, you're out there and you didn't realize you're going to put your Deloitte and Cox degree to such use, probably, right? Immediately. What were, some of the things you loved the most outside of, obviously being in an industry you love, on the business side of the kind of the film and entertainment world?
What's great about the entertainment industry is just how not boring it is, right? So that's both its blessing and its curse. I'll come back to that in a little bit, but the amazing part is you have this cool idea. It might be totally wonky. Like, we're going to set this guy on fire in a building and he's going to run and jump on this car and then these things are going to explode. And somehow you're going to make that happen, and you're going to figure out who you need to make that happen all in like a 2-week time frame. So it's never boring. It's very fast paced, and you get a real result of getting to see what you did on a screen come to life. And a lot of times people watch it and they're really excited. They think it's cool. So you get to see the comments, and that's a lot of fun. It's kind of like being in summer camp with a bunch of people trying to do a big prank, but you're doing that as your job. So I loved that part of the industry. It's a lot of fun.
What all were you involved with? Was it, you mentioned music videos, is it TV shows, movies, kind of what were some of the things that you were most proud to create? And then again, tying it back into the business, what's the model there? How do you guys get paid? How do you determine like moving up to the next size of project and things like that?
Yeah, so I'd say consistent business would be music videos, documentaries, commercials, and those work like I talked about before, where they basically put out a proposal, say we want X, you pitch, you get tried to get hired as the group that's going to do it, and you work it. I did do a few movies, feature films, and a kids TV show, and those work a little bit differently. And for those, they were independent. So it said, hey, we have this idea, we have this script, we want to make it, and you have to go out and raise the money yourself. Versus in the other example, Atlantic Records is going to pay you for the music video. And if you're going to do an independent film, you have to go out and raise that money from whoever. It can be part of your network. It can be friends of friends. It can be anything. So you go and do that, and I don't know, once you raise the money, you shoot the movie, and then you have to do all of the stuff that happens after, which people forget about. You have to find how to sell it, where it's going to be distributed, which now, as we all know, I mean, how many subscriptions do you have? Like, it's crazy, right? You have like 5 different apps to watch TV. So if you make an independent film, you have to go figure out who's going to buy it and what they're going to pay for it at that level. That's kind of it. It's about as simple and complicated as most business, right? Raise the money, then you can go do your idea, and then you got to get someone to buy it at the end of the day, or else you just raised all that money and shot all of that film, and no one's going to watch it.
So you spend the better part of 5-6 years in LA, understanding this business, having success in this space. What ultimately led you to decide, hey, I'm ready to pivot, change careers, go get my MBA, and maybe do something else?
I think while I had some great experience in the space and some really big wins, so I'm not going to pretend I didn't. I know a lot of people go out there and they don't get to have the opportunity that I did. It still wasn't stable enough for me. I was like, okay, I'm in my upper 20s. I sometimes I'm working overnight. Sometimes I have 2 jobs. Sometimes I have no job. Sometimes I'm in a mud pit in a coat because that's where we're shooting, and there's no indoor plumbing. It's just kind of a very weird place to be. And I said, I can't see myself doing this when I'm 40 years old. It's just not going to work. So I think I should go back into the business world. And I started to apply to business schools. I really didn't know where I get in or what it would look like. But I said, I'm going to take the GMAT, take a swing at it. And if I get accepted into some schools I'm excited about, then I'm going to go. And I'm just going to figure out next steps from there. And luckily, I was accepted to the Yale School of Management. And so I went from LA all the way to Connecticut to basically restart again for the second time.
I love that. And I think, like you mentioned, it's valuable to say you can try things, do things, have a successful career in one avenue, and then still have time to pivot and change and have a whole nother runway, right? I think that's a valuable part of your story, and should be things that these students or next generation listen to. As we kind of transition into the next phase of your career, briefly, what advice would you have for those folks who are listening who maybe want a career in entertainment or think about potentially pursuing that going forward?
Yeah. So career in entertainment, if I could go back and say, what would I have done differently to even improve the experience I had, is just get into it as early as possible with as many credits as possible. It doesn't matter if it's the lowest level budget, whatever. Don't be picky. Just do it all. Get that resume built up, because you're also building your network with each of those projects. You never know when that person is then going to be on something bigger. And you can start that in Dallas. You can do all the school films. You can do little stuff like that, and then go out to LA or New York or maybe Georgia, depending on what you want to do, and start building it back up from there. But I do think that experience is key in the industry. I don't think that you need to go to 12 years of school to be in entertainment. I think it's much more about get your hands dirty, and eventually a door will open for you.
Awesome. And then, so as you move into grad school, you have a lot of real life application to business, right? You've basically run many startups over, you even have formal training with Deloitte. What was your mentality going into business school? Were you, excited for the opportunity, didn't know what you would learn, feel like you had kind of a direction in place, or were you kind of an open book of saying, hey, let's experience these 2 years, take an internship, and kind of see what I like, and then pursue that avenue?
So I tried to be open-minded, but I don't know if I was completely open-minded. I did love the startup culture of entertainment so much that I knew that I wanted that again. While Deloitte was a great training ground, that wasn't the environment for me. And so that cut out a lot of traditional MBA jobs, right? Big consulting firms, things like that. I said, that's not for me. I'm going to go into the startup world. So that did narrow it. It still was a pretty wide net. But I actually grew up in a trucking family. My dad was in trucking my entire life. And so I, growing up, kind of thought, well, trucking's for boys, it's not cool. But at the time I was getting my MBA, all of this crazy cool stuff was happening in supply chain, right? It's like electric, hydrogen, autonomy, smart cities. Like it just seemed to be exploding with new tech and transformation technology just everywhere. And so I think that really excited me, and it felt like something familiar, but also something new at the same time. So that's kind of where my interest started to lean pretty quickly.
Okay. So, and then as you have that interest, you have a family background in trucking, whether it's family dinners, hearing your father speak about it, or just the subconscious you pick up as a kid from when your parents are in a specific industry. Did you pursue internships in that space? Did you already kind of have an idea of the landscape? You mentioned big corporations weren't ideal. You wanted the startup space, but some of these trucking companies are well established businesses. How did you examine the landscape of the industry and decide where you fit in and what was of interest?
Yeah, so students listening to this probably should not take all of my advice. I'll just put that out there. For my MBA internship, again, I knew I wanted to start up. My little brother was living in Sydney, Australia at the time, and he said, "Hey, my boss just quit and I need an intern. Why don't you come work for me?" So I moved to Sydney, Australia for the summer and lived and worked for my little brother, which was an amazing experience. It was exactly what I wanted. It was a tech startup, and they actually had a supply chain component, and we had the best summer ever. But it probably wasn't like, if you were trying to make the smoothest career transition, I don't know if that would have been what I would do again, but I would totally do it again. So I did that, and then I did. COVID happened. I was graduating business school in the spring of 2020, and it really did put a damper on tech startup interviews. But I did start talking to a bunch of different companies, networking with people, and this guy, Robert Brown, he was head of public policy at Too Simple, which was an autonomous trucking company at the time. And we had been in touch, and he said, "Hey, we're actually hiring a position like a strategy associate. I think you should interview." And so he really got me in to interview with Too Simple, and I really enjoyed everyone I spoke with. And that was when I walked into the autonomous trucking world. So I didn't know it was going to be autonomous trucking. It just happened to be the one where everything clicked. And now I'm still here like 4.5 years later.
Awesome. So give us an overview of autonomous trucking, kind of where we are in the industry, and then to where you are now with Kodiak, a little bit about Kodiak and kind of where you guys fit in the grand scheme and what you're kind of trying to create as a company.
Yeah, so just a quick autonomy landscape update, I guess. Most of y'all have seen a Waymo vehicle, right? Or you've probably seen them out on the street, and they're in San Francisco. I think they're in Austin. They're driverless,
Right.
right? You can't ride in them everywhere. They only go certain places, but you
Mm-hmm.
can get in a Waymo and it's driverless today. So essentially what Waymo is doing for cars, like you would get in, we are doing for semi trucks. So it's not going to be in your neighborhood, right? It's not going to be driving by your kid's school. But what Kodiak is doing, and what some other players in the space are doing on the trucking side, is trying to automate those really long, boring drives
Right.
where you don't have to have anyone in the cab at
Wow.
all.
Wow.
Yeah. So think about it like from Dallas to Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a trucking company, I really don't like Dallas to Atlanta because a driver has to go to sleep on the way there where they can finish the run the next day. But it's not long enough for it to be worth 2 days. So you get paid bad. It takes someone like 4 days to get there and back. It's a terrible run. But if you can put an autonomous truck on that, it can drive straight there because it won't have any hours of service restrictions like humans do, which means you can only drive for so many hours a day. And then it can turn around and come right back. So I think trucking companies are excited about that, to really fill the holes with the lanes that drivers don't want to do, or it's really inefficient for a human to do.
And where are you guys today? Are we in test mode? Am I driving past them on 635? What's the status?
So it's coming, but I will say it's going to be like a crawl, walk, run, just like with everything. It's not like all of a sudden we're going to flip the switch and it's going to be like Kodiak trucks everywhere. Um, Also, we don't want to own the trucks. I'm just going to
Right.
put that out there. We are a software AI company.
Yep.
We just put the software in the truck for it to
Right.
drive itself. But
Right.
so today I'm sitting in our Lancaster terminal. So our operations are centered out of Dallas or Lancaster, where I'm at. And we run basically the southern US for different partners on a regular basis. So some lanes we do 7 days a week. We go Dallas to Houston, Dallas to Atlanta, Dallas to Oklahoma City. So kind of anywhere in the Sun Belt we run, but it's all in test mode. So we have a driver in the cab today, and they just like won't really touch the steering wheel at all. So if you look in, and they kind of do this thing with their hands. Takes a lot of attention to do that, and that's what we're doing. But in West Texas, in the Permian Basin, we are actually partnered with Atlas Energy Solutions. They're like a leading sand, I can't talk today, frac sand hauler company. And we have operated driverless there already. So we've delivered sand. It's like a 21-mile route ish. They change over time. And it takes a long time because they go really slow, but it's a great place for autonomy because we're out in the middle of nowhere, right? People have to like stay in camps when they drive out there. It's not a great living situation. And instead, we can run this autonomous truck on a dirt road for all hours of the day. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't text. And so I think that's a great use case. And we're out there in the Permian Basin today.
That's amazing. And so the ones you mentioned where you have the driver in there, those are running true shipments. They're doing business deliveries and just proving out the model, building up the data to show. I imagine this is a very regulated space that you have to have a level of data to show that it's ready to go on the road, or is it more what is that kind of light switch that'll allow it to become from passenger assisted to fully autonomous, no driver in the cab?
Yeah. So regulation wise, we actually could pull the driver out in all of the southern states today. So there is nothing prohibiting that. So when we did the driverless runs in West Texas, there's nothing we have to do. Now we do work really closely with law enforcement and regulators. We don't just go do stuff without them knowing, right? We want to be good stewards. We want to be good to the public. We want everyone to know what's happening, why it's happening. So everyone's always in the loop. But to really decide to take the driver out like on public roads, it's what you're talking about, right? Like from Dallas to Houston, get the driver out of the cab. What we need to do is complete our safety case, which is kind of a really vague thing to say, but it's not vague at all, actually. It's like a probability risk assessment. And you're basically saying, here's all of the possible things that can happen on the road. Here's all of our simulation data. Here's all of our real world data. And we're assessing the risk that we have to do that. And so for every new domain we launch in, whether it's a desert in West Texas or it's on a Dallas to Houston lane, we will have to close a safety case saying we are comfortable with this level of risk and have all the data to back that up and be able to show people and say, this is why we believe we can do this now. And so that just takes time. It doesn't even mean necessarily that the technology isn't ready today, but it takes time to build that proof up to say, yes, we have the confidence we need to do this.
So a couple questions. I'm sure you get them all the time, but one, driverless, space to space, do they have, is someone responsible? So it gets to the end shipping point, it's unloaded by people. How does it know? Does someone just like you guys trigger it from the software to return the trip? Is there like a time space? I imagine someone remotely is doing it. Two, what happens if someone crashes into your truck, or even like what happens if someone tries to like break in and rob? Unlike a Waymo that has people in it, you guys have like physical product that needs to be delivered. How are those things considered? How should I be thinking about those?
Yeah, I think that without going into giant detail into the
Yeah.
product model, the truth is humans are in the loop.
Yeah.
What's the saying? It's like human and machine is greater than machine.
Right.
This is just another example of that. It's not like here's this machine, now humans are gone. So that's not how this works at all. We actually have a whole command center here, like basically right behind me, where they monitor these trucks. The trucks, because of all the sensors on them, you can see 360 degrees the entire time. So they can see, and we also do about 10,000 different checks saying that things are healthy. So we have people monitoring that, monitoring the feeds. We can, if someone tried to break in or something like that, we can actually see it real time. So that's happening. And then once it gets to a yard or DC or wherever it's delivering, people will be in the loop again. Like they might even get in and turn the truck around and reset it up somewhere before it takes back off. Like it will be able to be driven like a regular truck, and it will be interacted with like a regular truck. Someone's going to refuel it. Someone's going to still do a pre-trip, post-trip check, kind of all the typical stuff you do. It's just in the middle, it's just driving itself. So humans are still everywhere in this process. They're definitely not going anywhere.
So if I'm SMU alumni or some listening to this who has a fleet of trucks in the supply chain world, how should they think about implementing Kodiak or kind of thinking about what you guys offer into their future?
Yeah, I think this technology is coming. Like I said, it will come slowly, so you have some time. But I think the best thing to do is, I mean, you're welcome to email me, reach out to anyone at Kodiak, and we can walk you through what we offer, how it could fit into your network, because that's really important. It's kind of like what kind of lanes do you run? What kind of routes do you run?
Right.
Is it suited for autonomy? You know, if you drive 5 miles most days from one spot to another, it probably doesn't make sense to pay for a big souped up truck, right? So we can talk to you and figure out what works for you, and we're always happy to do that.
Awesome. And then so, you picked a startup world, you picked trucking because it's something familiar to you. You wanted the fast pace, wear a different hat every day. What does a day-to-day look like, or kind of a scope of work for the chief of staff at Kodiak look like for you? As a kind of a look behind the scenes of all you're doing. You're incredibly knowledgeable in the space, but what is it that you're kind of focused on? What are your big initiatives in your role?
Yeah, I'd say right now I've kind of got two primary initiatives. All in all, I'm really there to support the leadership team. So, our CEO, our CFO, our chief legal officer, if they have something that comes up for them that's getting in their way, like I should be able to help unblock it for them. And so I spend a lot of time with our investors and our board. So I work closely with our CEO and our relationships there and everything that goes with that, as I'm sure any of y'all that work at a company understand that investors and board take a lot of time. And I also spend a lot of time with our commercial team and our operations team preparing for our 24/7 driverless launch, which is going to happen in West Texas early 2025. So instead of just, one run or a couple runs here or there, we're going to have trucks that are owned by Atlas running 24/7 out there. Wow. So there's a lot of just operational components to making sure that goes off without a hitch. So I kind of split my time between those two initiatives right now, which makes it very exciting.
Awesome. And so you gave us advice for those interested in entertainment. What advice do you have for those graduates who maybe are listening to this and are saying, okay, wow, maybe trucking, autonomous vehicles, tech, that melting pot, what kind of jobs, what should they be thinking about as they potentially enter the workforce?
I think you obviously can take a lot of different routes to get here, as I did. But I think consulting always is a good feeder into stuff like this. Even say what I did at Deloitte, those skills are just pretty universal, and startups need people that are good at business, right? And if you're a jack of all trades, a master of none, like I am, that starting somewhere like that can be a great way to feed into it. Also, larger corporations like say a PACCAR or a Daimler that manufactures trucks, getting some experience for a year or two there and then pivoting to a startup is another great way to do that. Or you just start at a startup really small and go ahead and get your feet in the door right out of school. Startup world doesn't have as many rules. So it's kind of network and make your own rules.
Awesome. Now, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing all this insight, sharing your story. Very exciting world that you're working in. We're excited to kind of watch you and Kodiak evolve and this technology come into our everyday life. So we'll be tracking you for updates and sharing that with our members as they're aware of when they see these trucks passing them on the highway. So again, thank you. Excited to track your progress and the rest of your career. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good chatting with you, Mitch.